Breaking news, the team principal Ademir Safnauer at Alpine has been fired. This is due to Laurent Rossi, the CEO of Alpine racing team, stepping down. Now, this was a big question, and this was posed in a video I posted before. Alpine has been having such a terrible season. You saw Alonso leave them after last year, and you were thinking, why is he going to Aston Martin? Alpine is like finishing fourth in the championship points. They're one of the top middle tier teams. They're beating everybody else. But this season they seem to have completely dropped off. Not only has McLaren improved vastly, they're now losing out to Aston Martin on a consistent basis. The last two Grand Prix they had upgrades at the British Grand Prix, which they didn't even get to find out how they worked out because both of the cars had issues. One with a collision with Lance Stroll with Pierre Gasly and Esteban Ocon having an oil leak. And then last Grand Prix, through no fault of their own, both cars were taken out on the first lap. But it just seems like this was the tipping point. They could no longer allow for this team to be going the direction it is. The way Formula One is progressing, the investments that are coming into teams. Alpine just had a major investment, and I think you saw there's probably a couple of celebrities in the news, Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney, that really kind of made you understand what the investment was, but they were just the names of it. They weren't the big financial backers. They got hundreds of millions of dollars invested into the team. And with the results they're getting right now with these two French drivers and a French team, French people and French sports are very cutthroat if you didn't know. I mean, Formula One has always been a cutthroat sport, but French teams specifically are very cutthroat, and the fact they're not getting results on a consistent basis is terrible. Ocon's gotten their only podium, which was essentially luck because of the Monaco Grand Prix and the inability for cars to pass you very easily at that circuit, but they've just been 8th to 10th position, sometimes even out of that, where they just did not have the pace that would warrant them having a decent car or a decent result. This is one of these classic shakeups in Formula One where something's not working. You have to axe the people at the top. The CEO stepped down. Now this guy who's been a team principal that I didn't have much opinion on him. I did appreciate when Ocon and Alonso were battling in Saudi Arabia. They interviewed him during the race, an in-race interview, and he commented that he's going to let them race. They just got to keep it, to a certain degree, not take each other out. And I really appreciated it, his respect for racing, his respect for the fans, his respect for the competitive nature of the sport, because so many teams in Formula One, it's just hold position or, hey, if this guy's faster, we'll let him pass on the straight and you just move over for him. I like the intensity of fighting, but clearly the team is not pleased with the direction that it's going. Like I said, they're now 6th in the championship points, probably even worse. And they've got a guy who they just brought on in Pierre Gasly that they paid way too much in a contract. I think he got a $10 million contract from them where I don't think he warranted it. Maybe they thought he'd go to Haas or somewhere else and they wanted someone who scored points, but they could have probably gotten a better driver for that type of dollar and paid them way less, someone who has actually, hunger and drive to achieve more, because Pierre Gasly at this point is just a journeyman driver. So we'll have to see. I mean, this is the weekend we should see the real upgrades, and if they have a great result here, it actually kind of sucks for Ottman here, because they really never got to test out their front downforce wing at the British Grand Prix because of all the issues, and then they didn't even get to test really any of it at the Hungarian Grand Prix, and then this Grand Prix they're actually bringing in a new floor, which, if you don't know anything about the regulations, the floor is probably the most important part of these new generation era Formula One cars. Ground effect is one of the biggest reasons Red Bull is dominating. Adrian Newey, the chief engineer, the technical director at Red Bull, wrote his dissertation in engineering on ground effects when it comes to racing and cars specifically. That's why that car is so fast. And every other team has not really been copying the side pods or the wing or anything. They're trying to figure out how the downforce of the air going underneath the car is allowing it to go at such a faster pace, not only through the corners, but specifically on the straight, which Red Bull seems to be, 8 to 10 kilometers per hour faster on a straight. When you do that over the entire lap and entire race, that's just a major advantage. So if they're introducing that at the Belgian Grand Prix, They'll finally probably get some data from the front wing. You've got 2 upgrades essentially. If they have a great result here, it will actually be kind of sad for this guy because now he's got to walk away no matter what. I don't know if he's one of those under the radar types of guys. I haven't heard him be complimented by people, and I haven't heard him be rejected or talked down upon by people in the Formula One paddock. So be interesting to see where he lands. I like the guy personally. I don't know about his work ethic and everything else, but he seemed like he was trying to do everything he could with that team. But with that amount of investment coming in, with the prospect of how well they did last season, the teams that get to become the best in the middle pack of a Formula One grid, they want to break into those top teams. Like, you've got Red Bull right now. Let's say this before McLaren. The last 2 races, McLaren's lit themselves on fire. They might be the second fastest team. But before that, it went Red Bull, Aston Martin and itself engaged in this season too. But let's take those 2 out. It was like Red Bull, Mercedes/Ferrari. Now, if you're an Alpine team that's 4th last season, you're just getting up there, and maybe you can start beating the Ferrari. Maybe you can start beating the Mercedes. If that's possible, now you have a chance to fight for podiums, and potentially if things all work together and something bad happens at another team, you have an ability to win maybe 1 at the maximum 2 races a season. That makes you a premier Formula One team. If you can win a race in a season, if you can consistently get podiums, if you can fight in the top 4 or 5th with the Ferraris, with the Mercedes, with the Red Bulls, that's major recognition. That brings in fans, that brings in sponsors, that brings in eyes, that brings in respect of those drivers, and those drivers are now looked at as elite drivers who now have probably the potential to go to a top Formula One team if a slot ever opened up. And now people who are in the lower tier teams are looking at that as could be the middle ground, the stepping stone between one of the worst teams in Formula One to one of the best teams in the Formula One if they prove themselves there. And even crazier than that, those teams that get up into that position want to become one of the top teams now. Maybe they develop, maybe they get better guys, better team principals, better engineers, better designers, and they actually end up becoming one of the top 2 or 3 teams. That can happen for only a couple years, or it can happen like you've seen with Red Bull for the last, whatever amount of years. Vettel, then you had the Mercedes, and then them again. So we'll have to see, but I'm interested to see how Alpine will bounce back, because will they, or will this season just be development for next season's car, and will they have an actual competitive car next season? Let me know down below what you think. I'd definitely like to hear it, and I'll go back and forth with you on that. Also, subscribe and like the channel. Thank you.